everyone. Welcome to today's monthly event. I'm very excited because today we're talking all about distribution and kids content, and we have a wonderful guest who I've known for several years now, Greg, the CEO of batteryPOP. So, hey, Greg, thanks for joining us today.
How are you? Thank you so much for having me. This
I'm
is
doing
cool.
well. Yeah, it's great to have you. So, can you tell everyone a bit about batteryPOP and how you got started with it?
Sure. So my story starts back in 1999 when I was hired at Nickelodeon. Y2K was coming up, and there was a bit of a panic over whether the company would be ready uh, for the inevitable apocalypse. And so I got hired for a month. Nothing happened with Y2K. That month turned into 12 years. It was really a great place to start my career, and it got me to really fall in love with kids content. In the late 2010s, the ratings for Nick started to fall dramatically, and everyone started freaking out. Well, where are the kids? Where have the kids gone? But we knew where they went. They were going online. They were going to digital platforms. And today that is not such an exciting story. We all know that. But back then it was a big deal. The shift in the way kids were viewing content. So I saw an opportunity to launch a platform for kids content that lived exclusively in the digital space, where we can adapt to the interests of kids in a short amount of time. We could work with new and fresh creators, and we can make sure that everything on this platform was kid safe, appropriate for the age group, well produced, and meaningful content. So from that, batteryPOP was born. When we were onboarding kind of existing content, we were getting a lot more animation initially, because there were back catalogs that were accessible that hadn't been kind of showcased to kids in a long time. So that kind of content was available. Animation is obviously very expensive to create. So as we bring on new content and fresh content, it skews more towards live action because the production process is just, demonstrably different. When it comes to kind of the age demos of batteryPOP, even though 6 to 11 is really our wheelhouse, we do have content that ranges from appropriate for 4-year-olds up to 13-year-olds. And on the preschool side, I would say there's a lot more emphasis on the animation. As you get older, you start seeing more of a balance. And then the tween and up, we're really seeing more live action. Another big change for us was when we started looking at the YouTube space and creators who are creating on YouTube, but are looking for ways to get off of YouTube and access audiences on other platforms. And that is by and large going to be live action, because a lot of it is, influencer content. They're making
Right.
slime, they're doing challenges, or it's, they're playing Minecraft or Roblox. But it's a they have their image right there, and you can see them playing. So even though most of the on screen that you're seeing is the pixels of the game, you still have the real person there in the corner. So more and more the content is skewing live action because it's just so tough to create animation, and and see it through in kind of the way that you imagine, and just the cost per second of animation is frightening for a lot of creators, and
Yeah.
there's a much higher barrier to entry on the animation side.
Yeah, 100%. That makes sense. Animation is definitely much more expensive.
Yeah.
So, in terms of batteryPOP and what you're doing with it, what do you feel was missing or is missing in the kids space that you're trying to basically fill that hole?
Mm-hmm. For one, it's a question of curation and making sure that with all the content that's out there, that somebody is putting eyeballs on that piece of content, on that show, vetting it to make sure that it's 100% age appropriate for kids, vetting it to make sure that there's a quality of production that's in there.
Yeah.
Early on, we were taking some stuff that really had a lot of heart, but the production value wasn't there. And over time, we've been able to kind of cull that down to stuff that we felt like has potential, even if nothing ends up happening. You want that sense of potential that either this particular show or this creator is building towards something bigger. We definitely launched this as kind of a I don't want to say minor leagues. It's more like in basketball, you got the NCAA's, and it's a very high quality product, but it's not it's not the NBA. So it's entertaining of its own right, but it's also trying to build and grow towards something bigger.
So in terms of the platform, I mean, you're obviously hosting a lot of a variety of different content. Um, is there a strategy for content curation? Like, and how has that strategy changed over the years? I mean, you kind of alluded to it that you were kind of a little less stringent on maybe the production value, but so what are you kind of, how do you basically decide what goes on the platform?
So if you go to like batterypop.com or one of the BatteryPop Roku channels right now, you'll see a lot of content that's been, like I said, onboarded from all over. Um, BatteryPop has evolved in that it's not right now about watching whatever piece of content it is on BatteryPop. We have begun distributing the content that's in our library to other kids safe platforms that have a demand for video content, but not necessarily the bandwidth to go and curate and collect the quantities that they need to have a vibrant video section on their platform. So while we will look at anything, and when I say a level of quality, is it well lit? Do they use a microphone where you actually hear what people are saying? Is it in focus? Is there a beginning, a middle, and an end? Those kind of things. But we're also looking at our wider network of distribution partners and thinking, okay, can this piece of content work on the Roku channel? Can it work on the KidJoe app? Can it work on FunBrain? We are curating for partners as much as we're curating for ourselves. So if we get a show from a creator, it's not just going to live on BatteryPop. It may go to FunBrain. It may go to KidJoe. It may end up on the Roku channel. It may end up on another Roku app that we work with. So we're thinking about the audiences that these particular platforms have aggregated and thinking, where does this piece of content work? Can we build an audience off of BatteryPop, but still for kids? So we are looking at, what we're basically constantly studying audiences and seeing who's watching what where and trying to fill the demand for that particular partnership.
That makes sense. And it seems that, I mean, I kind of have a sense, but I don't know if it's shifted over the years in terms of what kind of creators you work with. So are you working, you kind of not, you're sticking with independent creators, or do you work with kind of people that are signed, or what kind of, what's the range of levels of creators that you're working with?
Right. So we'll work with anybody, like I said, that's creating quality content. And again, there's a bit of a feel to that. There's no science to what makes it quality. We do work with some studios that have, back catalogs. Look, I think one of the big decision makers for us is, and this is relevant to another part of this conversation, but does the business model make sense for that particular partner? Because we're not paying for the content up front. We are distributing it and monetizing it, and we only make money if the program makes money. So when we speak to a rights holder that's got a large catalog of content, they may say to us, this is our premier content and it's only going to broadcast. This is our second tier and it's only available for a minimum guarantee, or you can license it for a fee. And then here's the content where we want to see what can happen with it if more kids discover it. So this we will do on a revenue share. And that's our focus is, if the program gets viewed here, there, wherever, and there's advertising dollars coming in or there's subscription dollars coming in, then we are sharing that revenue back to the creators. So for the creators that are open to that model, and you're seeing it more and more these days, particularly because we've been around now for almost 9 years, there are creators that came to us a couple of years ago and said this is only available for a licensing fee or a minimum guarantee, are now coming back and saying, okay, we've kind of gone through that phase of this show. Now we want to see what we can do with the revenue share model. So if the creator is open to that approach, then that will make sense for us. And our contracts are non-exclusive and they're very easy to get out of because we're not ever looking to be an obstacle to success. We want to be a resource. So, if you launch a program through BatteryPop and all of a sudden Nickelodeon comes calling and they say, we want to develop this, but you can't be anywhere else, you let us know. And for us, it's a great story that you got your start on BatteryPop. But we were never prevented from then going on to that next bigger opportunity if it's there.
Yeah, and that's, I think, one of the things that definitely grabbed me right away as a creator was, that you guys had a great platform, but also that I wasn't kind of signing something where I knew I was stuck. I was going to be stuck if in case something grew out of it.
Right, right.
So that was really reassuring to me as a creator. Not that I was necessarily expecting anything like grandiose to come out of my series elsewhere, but it was nice just knowing that if something did happen, that I wasn't kind of glued to a specific thing that I signed. So that's,
Right.
I think, a great thing, especially for independent creators.
And a lot of that came from when I was at Nickelodeon. If you signed a development deal with Nick, you were essentially signing away the rights to your story, and you may have a ton of involvement. You may be phased out.
Yeah.
And what I kept seeing was great concepts pitched to Nick. The creator signed some kind of development deal, and then that concept ended up in a file cabinet somewhere, and the creator could never do anything with it again because they made that agreement. Now, maybe having that Nick deal helps you get your next deal, and that's not a bad thing. But if you've poured your heart and soul into something, and all of a sudden you sell it away at what it lower than it could be worth of it if you had developed it yourself, that could be kind of a depressing scenario. So it still happens, and I understand that that's the business model that the big networks have to work with.
Yeah.
Wanted to give creators the opportunity to grow and never be a hindrance to that.
Yeah. So switching gears a little bit and going a bit more, I don't want to say general, but because we were focused on kids, but in terms of, and this kind of segues into this question, is what's something that producers should make sure to ask or think about when signing a distribution deal, and getting into that kind of thing, aside from maybe the exclusivity of things, but
Mhm.
is there anything else that you would suggest for producers to kind of look out for?
Yeah, I mean, exclusivity is key because you don't want to go exclusive unless there is significant value or some other hook that only that partner can offer. It's rare. I mean, look, if YouTube comes calling and they want to do some kind of exclusive thing and they're going to promote it, and because they're going to promote it, you're going to get a ton of money. That's something you certainly want to consider. You also want to look at what the other content is that is on this platform. Are you surrounded by quality
Right.
content? Because they say you're only as strong as your weakest link. Just going way back, we had a program that was, like I said, had a lot of heart, but wasn't well produced. And then I had a meeting with a big company, and they took a look at the platform, and they were all jazzed to work with us. Then they saw this show, and they said, "You can't put my program next to this." It
Right.
diminished the value of what I'm offering. So you do want to look at what does the other programming look like, and am I in a place of quality? Because
Right.
that'll reflect on your content as well. And then you want to look at, where is that content going to be discovered? More and more, we're seeing that connected TV is becoming the kind of the big growth area for all content. So does that platform have access to connected TV? Are they on Roku or Amazon Fire TV? Are they distributing to all possible points and not restricting your content to places where it may not get discovered? So
Right.
yeah, and then just the ability, like I said, to not be locked into something, so that if a bigger opportunity comes along or another opportunity, but you want to kind of balance it and not put all your eggs in one basket. Do you have that kind of flexibility? And then the only other thing I'd say, and it's not crucial, but this is a relationship-based business, and
Yeah.
will they take your call? Will they answer your emails? Will they be honest about performance? And it's we're all learning as we go along, and so you don't want to be kind of throwing it into a black box and then keeping your fingers crossed. And we've
Yeah.
onboarded quite a few creators, and I'm not saying that I have a conversation every day with every one of them, but we try to be as responsive as possible, and be open to giving feedback, giving advice, being a partner. I think that's
Yeah. Yeah, you guys are a really great partner. And like, I mean, anytime I've emailed you with questions, your response time is super fast compared to many other people I'm communicating with. So you guys are on it. So I'm definitely, if you're a creator and you're interested in being up with batteryPOP, and whether it's just as a creator or in any other format, in working with you guys, I mean, you're definitely fantastic as a team, and you guys are so nice, and it's just been a great experience. So
Yeah,
I
I
have
mean,
no complaints.
we're having fun. You know, the other day I got some outreach from somebody who's launching a puppet series, and he's got maybe 12 episodes up on YouTube right now, and it's not really ready for battery pop. There's not a whole lot I could do with it yet, but I spent an hour on the phone, actually a video chat, just talking about the show and you know what I thought was working, where I thought there could be improvement. You know, there was really, it's just fun. You know, it's
Yeah.
the whole creative process is exciting. And you know, for me, I'm running a business. I would far prefer to be the creator, but it's just the way it all worked out. So when I have that opportunity, I really enjoy it, and the
Yeah.
team loves looking at new content and meeting new creators and just all these different perspectives. It's really cool to kind of see the way people think when they're trying to think like a kid, or think for a kid, or you know, just kind of get in that mindset.
Do you often show when you get a new series or you're thinking about acquiring a new series for batteryPOP or any of the other partner platforms, do you show it to your own kids to get their opinions?
I do a little bit. The challenge with using your own kids as a focus group is that their opinions are going to be skewed because they know what you're doing. And you know, sorry to keep on referencing my years at Nickelodeon, but you know, a lot of times I hear executives say, "Well, my kids." Yes, but your kids know that you're an exec at Nick, and they're coming from that,
Yeah.
you know, that point of context. So you know, if I'm watching something that's a lot of fun and they're not doing homework or busy with something else, yeah, I'll let them come and check it out. But you know, that's just one mindset, and you
Right.
know, they're
That's
coming.
not kind of like if your kids love it or hate it. It's like, no, if they hated it, we can't have it on batteryPOP. It's
Right,
not like that.
exactly.
Yeah.
And you know, my kids have their interests. You know, it's like I have this
Yeah.
Teen Titans Go. They're obsessed with Teen Titans Go. So you know, if something else is on, but so is Teen Titans Go, they're gonna walk away from you and go watch TNT. So you know, I do like to get their feedback here and there, but most of the time I have to take it with a grain of salt because I'm their dad and they know what batteryPOP is.
Yeah, exactly. And just so people know, is it you and how many people are looking at the content and deciding what gets on the platform?
So for like animation and kind of live action production, we have a head of content that watches all the content when we get a series sent to us to review it. So either I'll look at it or Brian will look at it, and we'll review it. Again, you know, looking for quality, trying to make sure that there's nothing that we would ever have to get an angry letter from a parent about. If it's influencer content, which we're getting a lot more and more of these days, we have what's called our Kidfluencer platform, and there we just hired somebody to kind of manage the whole influencer world that batteryPOP is getting deeper and deeper into. So that content gets vetted by her. And, you know, in that case, these creators are putting out 3 videos a week. So we're watching all the content, but we're also building a relationship where the parents and the kids know that, you know, this is what it means to be on batteryPOP. And we do have kind of a code of conduct, I guess you can call it, where, you know, we don't want violence, we don't want sexuality, we don't want any obscene language. Your audience is, on batteryPOP at least, likely going to be under 12 years old.
Yeah.
So you have to constantly be thinking as far as, you know, what is appropriate for that audience. But yeah, we still have to watch it all because, you know, we don't want anything slipped into the cracks.
Yeah, 100%. And I guess with influencers, obviously the sort of contracts or agreements are different because you have A, it's probably a lot more content to deal with, and B, you're dealing with a talent that's on camera that's not like a fictional character necessarily.
Right.
So I'm sure that there's some different levels of regulation there.
And
But
we have
yeah.
to keep an eye on what those regulations are because, you know, there are the COPPA laws, which we have to, you know, which is really about privacy. That doesn't really apply to the content itself.
Mhm.
There's KRU, which is the Children's Advertising Review Unit, which, you know, kind of keeps an eye on how the advertising and the content interplay. And then there are KidVid laws, which really don't technically apply to digital yet. They're broadcast laws, but you still
Mhm.
kind of want to keep to them, because eventually it will all bundle together. And then
Right.
every company is going to have their own standards and practices. And there's, again, it's not a science. There's the obvious things, but Going way back, we got a short where a character got punched in the face and red blood splattered out of his mouth. And I said to the creator, I'm not going to run that because that's excessive violence for our world. If you had made that red blue and it was water spitting out, maybe we would have looked at it differently. But the blood spurting out, we're not okay with that. So those are our standards and practices. Those are decisions that we have to make, and you try to kind of be consistent, but you also have to acknowledge that different parts of the world kind of have different mentalities about what's appropriate. This is actually really worth looking up. There's something called Pre-Jeunesse, which is a annual, again, I don't know if it happened this year, but an annual event in Germany. And one of my favorite people in the world, David Kleeman, who, if you guys look him up, he's really just a wonderful person and so plugged into the kid space. He curates and he judges content from around the planet. And he brings back to New York every year a collection of what he finds to be kind of the most interesting, most intriguing, most thought-provoking content, for a variety of reasons. And you will see content from parts of the world that you cannot believe is designed for kids. Would never fly here in the States, and I'm assuming not in Canada, but in Denmark, they're like, yeah, that's cool. So, you have to kind of stick to your guns when it comes to your standards and practices, and guns is probably not the right word, but you got to kind of be consistent with what is appropriate for your platform. And it may mean looking at something that someone else has said is fine and deciding it's just not for us.
Right.
I feel like it would be problematic, and I apologize, but we just don't feel comfortable taking it.
Yeah. And are you taking only, just to clarify, are you taking only English language stuff for batteryPOP and the partner platforms, or are you open to other languages?
We're open to anything. I mean, we're a small team, and so our language skills are limited. We do have some partners that are looking for other languages. In fact, one partner in particular is always asking, what do we have in German? What do we have in French? Spanish is where we really have kind of the second largest library next to English. But we are open to looking at anything and taking on anything, because if it's in a language that our audience doesn't understand, it just won't get the views. But that doesn't mean that in 6 months we're not going to form a partnership with a platform in another country where it would be perfect. So we are definitely interested in looking at any language. I just can't guarantee that we're going to be able to do much with it because, well, first of all, we don't know what's being said. It's hard to vet. And second of all, we just don't have the audiences in non-English countries like we have with English. But certainly open to it.
That makes sense. Yeah. Okay, cool. So in terms of, I mean, for creators, obviously making money off their content is an important element that they're always thinking about. From your viewpoint, what are the kind of best ways or different ways that creators can monetize their content? Obviously, there's the one that you've obviously mentioned, which is, from ad revenues and revenue sharing and things like that. But are there other strategies for creators to make money off their content?
So for new content, it is a real challenge to monetize, because it always comes down to traction, to eyeballs, to ad impressions, or has it been picked up by a subscription platform? So anyone who's launching new content is going to put it up on YouTube, as they should, because you never know, right? You're rolling the dice, but there's no downside really. Other than, well, there's a downside with YouTube in that, the comments could be awful. YouTube may recommend something inappropriate for the next step. But as far as looking to build an audience, there's no reason not to go there, and you'll get ad dollars, but it's going to be a minuscule amount unless some kind of magic happens, and that magic doesn't really happen anymore. Platforms like batteryPOP and others like us, we will distribute your content and run it on either AVOD platforms, advertising video on demand, or SVOD, subscription. And with a subscription platform, your revenues will be based on a share of voice. So how many views did your content get compared to the other content that came from that same provider? And then the overall subscription fees that have come into the service that get assigned, in our case, to batteryPOP. We then look at the data as far as how many views, and then we divvy it up proportionately. In some partnerships, we don't necessarily get that granular data, in which case we will divvy up the subscription revenues really based on how much content was provided in relation to the other content. That's not the greatest approach to it, but that's, the data that we have is limited. We're also in the kid space where data is really limited because you can't really get any user-based information. So, we have to work with what we have to work with.
Yeah.
So distribution to those kind of platforms is kind of the best approach. Look, making content is expensive, and it's not so easy to make that money back. In fact, it's sometimes impossible. I think the goal is to enhance the value of that property by putting it in places where kids can discover it, so that the next time you go out to create more, there's a little bit of leverage there. There's a little bit of a fan base that has, that cares about it, because that has value that later down the road can translate into dollars. The one thing that I try to caution creators against is, if you're pitching a new program, don't show me what the character is going to look like on a toothpaste or a pillowcase, or a toothbrush or a pillowcase or a stuffy. Because if the audience doesn't connect with that character or that program, you're never going to have that licensed toothbrush out there. Focus on the character, and that will all happen if there's any excitement around it. So, work with everybody who is interested in hosting your content, distributing your content, monetizing that content. The dollars aren't always going to pour in unless you have that strike of lightning that particular audience really falls in love with it. Now, we have some partnerships with platforms where we know that if a certain piece of content gets put, let's say in slot 1A, it's going to get a outsized proportion of the revenues. And so there is a little bit of that. We can work with certain platforms to say, can you feature this, because we think that this one's got potential, and then it would potentially get more of the revenues in some of the other programming. Kids are a moving target, so you're always kind of chasing them here to there. There are some right now that we work with. We know that Minecraft content on the Roku channel does really well, and one of the creators we work with is doing really well as a result. And he's like, for years I was making these Minecraft videos and I was making a trickle on YouTube, and all of a sudden, you guys are sending me these nice checks. I'm like, it was, part of it was just, good timing. We found the right platform, and the audience found that platform too. So if we have that opportunity, we'll try to kind of figure out how to craft that. But it's really, you want to go far and wide. You want to make sure that you're everywhere you can be, and, focus on pleasing your audience first, because the value grows over time if the audience falls in love with what you've made. There are no really quick wins, unfortunately, that I could think of, other than the occasional platform that just kind of mints money because they've got the audience and they can put that thing right in front of them when they want.
Right. Yeah, it can be a tough thing to kind of accept, I guess, but I think it's not impossible to make revenue. It's just kind of, it does have to do with timing and, things working out in the right way, but it also is persistence, I think, of the creator to kind of make something work. So
it has to be, because I think ultimately when you want to go and pitch to a network or a studio or someplace where there is real money to be spent, you have a lot more leverage if you're coming in with a fan base. If people care about your program and you're going in with that pitch and you already have an audience behind it, it's a lot more meaningful than coming in with a great idea that no one's ever heard of, because these organizations are not big fans of risk, and they're taking enough as it is. So if you can prove that the audience is already connected, then you're going to make a much better impression on those decision makers at the higher levels with the bigger bankrolls.
Yeah, for sure. Have you, over the years in sort of the kid space and now doing sort of the digital, not necessarily at broadcasts at Nick, but what you're doing now, have you noticed any changes in the distribution world, whether it's in terms of like policies or trends that maybe would be good for creators to know about or be aware of? Like, because maybe they think it is still the same as it was before, but things have changed. Are there things that you've noticed that have
I mean, look, I think if you're able to kind of tap into the zeitgeist, that is helpful. Video game content is huge right now. So if you came out with a program that leverages the world of video games, or a show that has a big slime component, you're more likely to connect with today's audience, because that's what they're watching. Or dance is very big right now. So you kind of want to tap into what's happening. You can use social media to pick up on these trends, and try to build off of that, whether it's episodic for a story or your whole concept is crafted around that. It's good to kind of get the feel of what kids are into, and what kind of interactions they expect to have with content. Then there are some universal truths that I preach to creators all the time that never changes. I mean, number one for me across kids content is your main character the somethingest? Have you created a character that is, represents superlative? Are they the most this, the biggest that, the greatest something? Especially for kids content, if that character really represents an extreme and a hyperbole, it makes it so much more fun for the kids to get to know that character, and it gives the creators and the writers so much to work with. And the example I always give, going back to now 20 years, or no, however long, yeah, about 20 years with SpongeBob, he's the world's most optimistic sea sponge. And he's not just a funny sea sponge. He's not just a curious sea sponge. He's the world's most optimistic sea sponge. And that superlative drives a million stories from that one character, because that character can, that characteristic can be inserted into any scenario, and it totally changes because you brought that catalyst in. So to me, if I see a pitch and the main character isn't just the greatest, then I don't see where it's going to go. I really think that if you're describing your main character in relation to other characters, in relation to the world, in relation to the plot, you don't have it. That character needs to drive a million stories, and that only works if that character is a superlative, is the somethingest. So that I see is consistent, whereas these trends, as they evolve, keep your eye on social media, see what the kids are doing, see what they're watching, and see if you can kind of incorporate that into your current pitch. Now, if you look at the networks, they kind of have their approach, and they're going to do certain things over and over and over again, maybe even a few years past their expiration date. So you can go and try to create for that, but you'll also find, as I said about Risk, that these networks go back to the same creators over and over because they like known quantities. So, Bunked is a great show. If you came to them with a camp show, it may be great, but they're going to say, well, we're going to get our camp show from so and so because we know that this creator specializes in camp shows. So, paying attention to what the networks are doing kind of gives you an idea of what they're looking to do and what slots they're trying to fill. So you could come at the networks and say, okay, you're lacking this. You used to have a great variety show and you don't have it anymore, but variety is still popular. Here's what we're going to do.
Right.
But I think in this world of web series and short form content and kind of independent production, staying on top of the trends is the way to connect and feel like you're providing something fresh and relevant that can connect, because it's really just all about connecting. Are you connecting with your audience in a meaningful way? Are they watching it, and do they want to come back for that next story, that next adventure? And if it's something they've seen before, you're less likely to break through.
Yeah. And I think that applies across the board with any kind of content. I mean, you kind of want to have, not to say that there are those kind of shows, whether they're kids or for adults, that kind of break the mold. I would think maybe Queen's Gambit is sort of something recent where, I think the creator said he tried for 30 years to pitch that show. And everyone said, like, no one's going to watch a show about chess. Like, it's just not going to happen. So, you kind of have to, it is about like the perfect timing, but it's also sometimes it just happens like where there might not be a trend, but you kind of create a trend.
Yeah,
but I feel like that's a lot more rare.
Someone is always going to hit that home run. Someone's always going to have that lucky break. Those things are there to be had.
Yeah.
But it's like a lottery ticket. I mean, yes, you got to play to win, but there's other kind of, you can go for smaller victories along the way, and then hopefully that develops into a meaningful career where you can then have a little bit of leverage to go and pitch that bigger concept that is more unique and out of the box.
Yeah.
But if you're just trying to get attention, if you're trying to kind of get in the game, it helps to kind of work with what's out there already
Yeah.
and not try to rewrite the playbook.
Yeah. Yeah. I've learned that lesson. I have those projects that are, kind of oddball, not quite the right timing for it. But and then I realized, like I'll get there. It's fine. Like that's there. It's done. It's ready to go. But I can create all these other great concepts that are sort of trendy, I guess you
Mhm.
could say, that will actually get eyeballs. Because at the end of the day, it's whether it's kids content or other content, like you want people to watch it. So, you got to kind of keep that in mind when you're
Right.
creating
And
content.
by no means, don't shoot for the stars. I mean, you have to, but you have to balance the reality of this industry with the moonshot. And, it's why, where we were working with some interns from production school and said to them, we're not doing a lot of production right now. It's going to be about spreadsheets. It's going to be about screening. It's going to be about onboarding things into our content management system. I mean, these are the gears that move the whole thing, and you kind of you have
Yeah.
to find that balance. You want to keep writing, you want to keep creating, you want to have that concept, and so there's always a story if someone comes into a pitch meeting with like 3 ideas and they all get rejected, and like, well, I got this one other thing, but I don't know, and that becomes the one that becomes the mega hit. It certainly happens, but you can't play those odds and just wait for that moment, because it only happens to the few winners, and the rest of us want to also have interesting, exciting, and successful careers in this space. So in a way, you got to kind of feel your way through what makes sense now, and what can I do to be productive at this moment, while you still want to dream big. Because if you don't dream big, the thing's going to all flatten out, and there's going to be a time when that one crazy idea is going to be the right idea. So have
Yeah.
it there, be ready with it, but also be ready to fill a need. um, Even if it's not necessarily your dream thing, it may end up evolving into something so wonderful. You're like, yes, I'm so glad I went this route.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So going back to batteryPOP for a second
Mhm.
specifically, what are the benefits for for creators distributing their content on the platform? I mean, obviously now you have partners, which is great. I think, did you have partners when I joined? I
Not
think
to that
not.
same
No.
extent. No, it was more about trying to drive eyeballs to us.
Yeah.
The model kind of flipped in that, we love to get views, and we're seeing, it's growing on connected TV, which is kind of relatively new for us. Um, but we decided, rather than trying to get the audience to come to us, we would go where the audience was.
That makes sense.
So I think that one of the benefits of working with batteryPOP is that we're the ones being strategic about where to place your content, because we know what the audiences look like on these various platforms and apps and websites and connected TV channels. So if there's a piece of content, if there's a web series that you've created, you may not be able to call up the Roku channel and get it on there, because they're not taking calls from individual creators. They're working with
Right.
organizations. So we could say to them, look, we just got this show. We think it's going to be a great fit. We're gonna drop it into the feed, and you're gonna have it, and please feature it. So it's our job to know what the audiences are doing around the world of digital, and trying to fill those needs with content, fresh content that's coming in. So we're trying to do that strategic part for you. And also the fact that we're monetizing the content. And again, it's like, if you hit a home run, it's great. If not, but you got a couple views, it is a few bucks. It's not gonna, it's not gonna cover that, that helicopter shot that you had to have in your production. But at least it's something. And it also gives you a sense of, is my content connecting, and are people watching it? We've got great content that we've never found the right audience for. And then we've got content that we thought, okay, we'll take this, and it has ended up, for whatever reason, doing well. But
Yeah.
we're trying to be strategic for you, so that you can focus on being creative and being the best producer that you can be, because obviously creative is only the first half, and you gotta make the thing. But distribution is yet a whole nother piece of the equation. And if you can find a partner that can help you do that, um, that's where we fit in.
Yeah. And that, I think for a creator, that takes a lot of stress off their shoulders, knowing that you guys are going to vouch for their content.
Mhm.
It's not just kind of it's going into a vault somewhere and it's there, but it's not really
Right.
being kind of pushed or at least attempted to be pushed in any way. So it is really nice to know that you guys are there for the creators. Like, I mean, you don't really have a business model without the content and
Right.
from the creators. So I think it's really great that, and a huge benefit for creators working with you, because they know that, oh, you guys are going to take care of me and my content. It's not just kind of, oh, great, thanks for giving it to us and
Right.
bye kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And look, you may be surfing the web one day and find a kid's site, and oh my God, your show is there. But it's on a kid's site, and it's on a quality kid's site. You know, there are some other distribution channels that you can go through where you can, like I said, it's worth exploring every route. But there are some where you may, end up on some, less than impressive. I'm not saying inappropriate, but, clickbaity kind of
Non-curated.
site, and it's like, well, this is not really doing me any good,
Yeah.
because the right audience is not finding it. So, if I'm going to get nickels and dimes and revenues, I'd rather get it where I know kids are watching it, so that at least in addition to nickels and dimes, I'm also winning a few hearts, versus it just got flung here and I'm making the same nickels and dimes, but it's a black hole.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the benefit of being on a platform that's curated versus just kind of uploading it somewhere, and it's still a platform, but no one's really kind of curating that to make sure it actually fits for the platform. So I think that's great too.
But
And,
do that too. I mean, if
yeah.
you can put it up on Vimeo, and you can put it up on Daily Motion, anywhere where you can do it yourself, there's no reason not to. But it's, you are basically tossing it into a very large pile and hoping something happens. And these days it really doesn't.
Yeah. So to kind of close it off, and since we're nearing the hour end, you mentioned to me that you're looking to get more Canadian content on your platform and for your partners. So can you tell us a bit more about that and your goals and what kind of content you're looking for?
Again, anything that's appropriate for 2 to 13, really 4 to 13. We don't do a whole lot with the kind of nursery rhyme world, but we would love to take a look at. We certainly want to see more diverse viewpoints in the content that we have on batteryPOP. To be completely honest, that diversity has been hard to come by. And I think the more that we explore partnerships outside of the traditional kind of New York LA thing, the more we'll find other ways of life, other modes of thinking. Canadian content and American content are not particularly different, I think. I think that we kind of have similar mentalities,
Yeah.
at least for the last couple of weeks, finally. But the more wide of a net we cast, I think the more interesting and inclusive the content can be. So we're looking for those different points of view. We're looking for more diversity, and we want to encourage people who are not normally part of the kind of core production centers of the Northeast to still be creative and still think that there's a route to reaching an audience and building a connection with kids that's meaningful.
Yeah. And just one last question in terms of content and what you're looking for. In terms of actually getting the content with you guys, is it so you're only taking finished content, or is there an opportunity for development?
Right now, we're looking for finished content. We're looking for content that's been produced and is ready to get out there in front of eyes. The only time we really do original or custom is when there's a brand attached to it.
Right.
We have our own studio capability, so we can create. We have partnered with creators from the batteryPOP roster in the past to help. We have a Lego animator we worked with once. If there's some animation that makes sense for a certain style that we already have a relationship with, we may tap into that for the branded content. But as far as our distribution network goes, yeah, we are looking for completed content. We still, where we want to evolve to is similar as the as the network grows, particularly on connected TV. We do want to start looking at the opportunity to create originals, and like I said, have that variety of voices. So it's on our timeline, but right now, the way the business is currently set up, it is about monetizing content that's come through, that may already be on YouTube, that may have already been pitched elsewhere, and let's see what we can do with that.
Cool. Well, I think that covers a lot, and we kind of went a variety of different places and gave people some insights into different areas of kids content and distribution. Is there anything last things you wanted to add before we end off, or?
I mean, I hope that everyone's having fun doing this. You know, we've all chosen this creative world, and you know, it comes with its ups and downs. You know, right now the world needs joy, the world needs fun stuff, the world needs quirkiness. So, you know, keep being creative. I know that's so generic, but it's meaningful. And you know, I guess the other thing is that there's a lot of kids content out there coming from certain spaces that, you know, I grew up on polished animation, and I feel like that was very informative to who I am today. And I'd like to see that element of care and precision still going into content. So, you know, don't rush something just to get it out. Work on it till it feels meaningful, and then bring it out there, because that's gonna, you know, even if that's only, you know, two more kids that care about it, those two kids may be the ones who then wear the t-shirt one day and then tell their friends, and then it blows up. So
Yeah.
you know, just it can be discouraging, and it can be frustrating, and there are a lot of people out there that have different agendas, and I say work with everyone. You know, work with the slimy people and work with the really kind people, and see how it goes. But just don't lock yourself into anything you can't get out of, because the world keeps evolving and you need to evolve with it.
That's great advice and a great way to close off today's chat. And hopefully we'll be able to bring you back, and maybe next time in person we'll
Uh,
we'll see when that
what
will
does that
be.
even mean?
That's true. That's true.
I
But
haven't been. This is my office slash guest room. So I've been. This is my cave. I haven't seen. I haven't breathed fresh air in so long.
yeah. Well, hopefully we'll be able to work together again on something with Web
Awesome.
Series Canada and bring you back, because it's been very helpful and is great for me, and I'm sure great for everyone listening. So thanks
Cool. It was
again.
my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Of course.